She will. Welcome to the April National Poetry Month Verse Virtual Reading. It's great to see you, and we have a couple. We had three, but now we have two, it seems, features for this month. Howard Debs and Julia Kolchinsky Dasbach. And we're going to start with Howard. Howard Richard Debs received a University of Colorado Poetry Prize at age 19. After spending the past 50-plus years in the field of communications, with recognitions including a Distinguished Achievement Award from the Educational Press Association of America, he resumed his creative pursuits. He's a recipient, a finalist in the 2015 Anna Davidson Rosenberg Poetry Awards. His essays, fiction, and poetry appear internationally in numerous publications. His photography is featured in select publications, including Rattle Online, as an Ekphrastic Challenge artist and guest editor. His book, Gallery, a collection of pictures and words, published by Scarlet Leaf Publishing, is the recipient of, as finalist of the 2017 Best Book Award and 2018 Book Excellence Award. His chapbook, Political, published by Cyberwit Press, is the 2021 American Writing Awards winner in poetry. He's co-editor of New Voices, Contemporary Writers Confronting the Holocaust, forthcoming from Valentine Mitchell of London, publisher of the first English language edition of Anne Frank's diary. He's listed in the Poets and Writers Directory. Take it away, Howard.
Thank you very much. I've posted introductory remarks to the chat. If you'll notice, to leave more time for poetry. This is, after all, National Poetry Month. So now I feel a little less constrained with Julia and I holding down the fort and until Aviya gets here, and hopefully she will. This first piece I'm going to read is from a new forthcoming collection, Current Events. The piece was first published in the Galway Review. The Passing of a Poet. I read she died of cancer a few days ago. I went to her website. It was undisturbed, as if nothing had happened. I remember visiting Sandberg's Connemara, a National Historic Site. Walking into the house, it was as if nothing had changed since he was working and living there. The dining room table set for dinner, papers strewn all about. The same aura enveloped her virtual home. I listened to an interview with her originally aired on Poets Cafe, station WPFK in LA. She was sotto voce on the show, perhaps with little strength left. This just months before her passing. She spoke with brevity, belying the gravity of her written words, the power for eternity of the poetry of bearing witness. In memory of Elise Kuznets, 1966-2016. The next you need to see as well as hear. This is the Yankee Diner from my collection Gallery. Real food. Real food on the grill. Bacon grease laced slice of apple pie, hot bubbling apple juice spilling down the sides of the deep browned crust, percolating on the sturdy, ordinary crockery dish. No fine china, this. This is the real deal. It's all inside. See the gilt-edged chrome shine, red naugahyde stools soldiered up along the formica counter. Here the short order patois. Short stack 2 over easy hash browns slathered and smothered, blue plate special meatloaf platter, BLT, hold the mayo. Real people. Blue collar, white collar, open collar, t-shirt, undershirt, baggy pants, blue jeans, short shorts, tie-dye, baseball caps, police officers' hats, all there. Real life. Laughing, rowdy, angry tears. Let her alone. No more fights. Get your own. Don't walk away on me. Keep the ring. He doesn't care. It doesn't matter. It's too late. Got to go. Work, you know. Call me later. It hurt big time. Never again. Big game this weekend. Why didn't she tell you? Who knew? It won't happen. Promise? Never mind. Can't you find the time? Real time. On their way to the bus to visit a sick aunt, going to the lawyer to sign the divorce papers, heading uptown for a job interview, taking the kids to see Granny at the nursing home, rushing for class one more day, all alone. A cup of joe and one more to go. The night watchman leaves, paying for his breakfast, telling the waitress to keep the change. This is also from Gallery. I don't look up at the sky anymore. When I was growing up, we lived in the boonies, the edge of civilization, where JC lost his shoes, some said. Eventually, it all became just another part of the amalgam that is Metro Chicago, grown as if from vines, each intertwines with the rooted heart of town. So when you drive around on a street, you know, it just seems now only stoplights signal the change from place to place. But back then, we were pioneers, living on subverted farmland, sold for a pot of gold to developers who promised paradise to those who made the trek to trade the advertised woes of city life for celebrated suburban tranquility. So in the early evening, if the weather was right and the mosquitoes weren't ready to bite, I wandered out to the backyard and lay down in the grass, which I may have mowed earlier in the day. And because we were a ways away from the city lights, the sky lit up with stars and the fireflies were there as well. And you almost couldn't tell which was which, with so many of each in sight. And the new mown grass smell was sweet. And lying there, I felt anything was possible. This is also from Gallery. Running out of gas. The old gas pump stands well used and rusted outside the 50s diner, seen by most as just a relic on display along a stretch of US Highway 1, a long way from Springfield, Mass., the place it still calls home. Back in its heyday, it was something special, bright, shiny, and new, full of spunk, ready to go, waiting to serve. Now when you squeeze the handle, it creaks and shudders into a semi-wakeful state as if to say, I'm here, I'm trying, give me a chance. But its numbers still count. And this is from my chapbook, Political, a prose poem. fundamental attribution error. I don't want to be an alarmist, but around the corner outside of this library in an alcove near the emergency exit, there's a good-sized chartreuse suitcase just lying on its side, and people are passing by, ignoring it. I saw it on my way in to return my books. It's there next to a large plastic bag stuffed full. I'm not sure what's inside the bag or the suitcase either. So I thought I'd better let someone know. Oh, you're saying it's someone who's homeless, who left them there to come inside to cool off. They do it all the time. Okay, so I'll leave it up to you to decide what to do. I didn't intend to cause a scare, but you can't be too careful nowadays with so many crazy people out there. You know what I mean. And this is from the upcoming current events collection. A kind of cento, a cento of sorts. Babi Yar 2.0. A Russian missile attack has struck the TV tower in Kyiv. All the TV channels are off the air. Where? Just outside the center of the city. There is a park there. You let the earth turn upside down. A small park with some monuments commemorating events from the past. The tree looks sternly, as if passing judgment. This is also from Current Events. Flowers for the Dead, a found poem. Where have all the flowers gone? Oh, when will they ever learn? From the song written by Pete Seeger, 1955. A hospital parking garage converted to a morgue. 3 refrigerator trailers. Stacked on shelves 3 high, coronavirus victims awaiting pickup. She oversees these temporary quarters. It's always full, 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 she said. They were dying at alarming rates, alone by themselves with their families. She goes to the flower shop. She picks up her standing order. Yellow daffodils. If there aren't any daffodils, she'll take carnations. Yellow, please. That's the important part. Bright yellow. She enters each trailer and walks the aisle between the rows, pausing at each new body bag. There she carefully places a flower on top, 1 or 2. It depends on how many flowers I have, she said. Sometimes I run out. I'll go after work to go pick up more flowers. I know in the morning I'll need more. Source, New York Times article, May 5, 2020. The morgue worker, the body bags, and the daffodils. Thanks to Robbie for hosting and to James for carrying forward Firestone's legacy, and thanks to all for listening.
Thank you, Howard. That was powerful. Julia Kolchinsky Dasbach emigrated from the Ukraine as a Jewish refugee in 1993 when she was 6 years old. She's the author of 3 poetry collections, The Many Names for Mother, winner of the Wick Poetry Prize, Kent University Press, 2019. Finalist for the Jewish Book Award. Don't Touch the Bones, Lost Horse Press, 2020. Winner of the 2019 Idaho Poetry Prize, and 40 Weeks forthcoming from Yes Yes in 2023. Her poems appear in Poetry, Blackbird, American Poetry Review, and The Nation, among others. She holds an MFA from the University of Oregon and a PhD in Comparative Literature and Literary Theory from the University of Pennsylvania. Her dissertation, Lyric Witness, Intergenerational Collection of the Holocaust in Contemporary American Poetry, pays particular attention to the underrepresented atrocity of the former Soviet territories. She is the Murphy Visiting Fellow in Poetry at Hendrix College and recently relocated to Little Rock, Arkansas, with her 2 kids, cat, dog, and a husband.
Thank you so much for having me, Robbie. Thank you so much, Howard. It's so nice to finally share a virtual space after being so in touch for many years over the interwebs and being so connected in our poetic sensibilities of bearing witness to atrocity and our, connections to it at various distances. I'm going to begin with a poem from my first book, The Many Names for Mother. And I'll just say that I'm not going to read new poems, but as I read poems that aren't new, they all seem way too hauntingly relevant, unfortunately, right now. For War and Water. Everyone is having boys, my mother said. That means war is coming. The way it came in the old country, boys rising out of the ice and cold potato fields, boys laying bricks and digging wells and trenches and bodies, boys out of other boys, like my boy, born the year before. Cops killed even more Black boys, and boys killed other boys for loving boys, and more swastikas showed up on walls, and more walls went up where once ran rivers. But a river is not a boy. It can either run dry or bleed, and everyone will blame someone darker, or an animal, the gorilla who stole a little boy, or the gator who dragged away another. But in the water, they seem so strong, resilient even, these boys born months apart, these boys who beat the water down, who kick and beat it with their tiny fists, who kick as though they're running. These boys who grow not knowing they were born for war and that it's everywhere and there is no outrunning water. God, I haven't read that poem in a while, and it hurts to read that poem right now. It really hurts to read it, because I am so grateful that my son is here and that I am here and not across the water. So I'm going to read a poem that I really struggled to write that's in this book, that's about my family's immigration. And I struggled to write it because I kept writing it from my perspective. And the way I found my way into the poem was when I finally wrote it from my mother's point of view, was when I wrote it as a persona poem. And it also talks about how sometimes we used to say we were from Russia because we speak Russian, and no one knows where Ukraine was up until 2014, when Putin invaded Ukraine, and suddenly everyone knew where Ukraine was, and now everyone knows Ukraine. So this is the question in the voice of my mother. It always gets out, my foreign voice and name they can't quite place. Russia, I used to say, because Ukraine would lead to more confusion. Why did you come to America? They ask, and I change the subject or leave the room. For my daughter, this is not interrogation, but permission to tell her story, one without shame, heavy and sour, no judgment for being what we are, because most can't hear it when she speaks. Is the only difference in our accounts accent and accentless? Is hers more vivid? Its gaps filled in by years of stories. At age 6, she never could have seen the places cast now in a worded half-light. Still, she captures them and calls it art, calls it poetry, calls without hearing me say, I lived that thing you love to reimagine. In Kiev, the train station, detailless now, save for its wash of white, bunk beds, crying there with all the will and wildness of a child and all the childish reasons or their lack, because she had to leave behind a life-size doll that walked beside her when she held its hand. Flying, family she'd never known and soon forgot, more flying, sleep, lights, but she remembers them. The flashes of pictures taken when keeping eyes open was harder than standing. The glowing house with a giant bowl of pears, bananas, and other fruit she'd never tasted in winter. And that couch where she fell asleep, only to wake screaming in a strange room. But what of the looks? How they scoured our clothes for gold until I was lucky to keep my wedding band. What of the fortune it took to get out? 7 Jews, unheard of, young, old, and older, armed with only our red passports, inspected for hours at the customs gate, where we never heard the English words we'd learned. Welcome home. And this is quite a recent poem. It's the most recent published poem of mine, and it was written about a year and a half ago. It's kind of the closing poem of my dissertation, and again, it hurts how relevant it is. And it deals with, being a descendant of Holocaust survivors and of my great-grandfather likely perishing at Babin Yar, but I have never been able to find his name in any archive. So it deals with that. The past doesn't rise like smoke. I don't envy even a second of your life, my mother says. Not a single second. Babushka agrees, pities me. The 2 unmanageable kids, the disabled husband. It's just so hard for you, she says, recalling how her face burned when she was left on the top bunk of the train evacuating her family from Kiev, the city not yet surrounded, but certain to fall. War more than memory, war the way she names her life. Missing without a trace. Her father stayed back, died, and after him, she named her daughter Light. He has to lie at Babin Yar. Where else, she asks, watching the 3rd night candle smoke. I do not say Black Earth is made of all our dead. I do not say I'm tired of counting them. I say I will keep trying to find his name. I say our people are made of miracle and half believe it when I ask my father about his dead. He doesn't know their names, just that they never left Odessa. The Shoichet neighbor survived, he recalls. Severed chicken heads, the godly way, and lit Hanukkah candles in their courtyard. My father remembers smoke rising against December, gray on black, until there was no trace of flame. But the past doesn't rise like smoke. There is nowhere for it to go missing. The past is every fried potato and charred wick. My son's nail singed, singing over the candles, the wrong words of a Hebrew blessing we were never taught. The past rises like swifts, perhaps, who stay aerial for months, digging for earth in the clouds, abandoning the sky only to make more birds who will rise and rise in swarms from narrow chimneys, who will refuse to smoke, who will return only once having left their names carved in unsuspecting air. And then let's try to end on an uplifting note, shall we? I would really love to leave you with some humor, because I brought you to Odessa, which is my dad is from an area near Odessa called Belgorod-Dnistrovsk, and Odessa is all about, you know, laughing through the dark times, right? Through humor is how we get through it. So if you've ever had someone try to translate a joke for you from Russian or from another foreign language into English, you've probably experienced how it fails miserably. So this is a poem called Jokes Don't Translate Well from Russian. And it's me trying to be funny in a poem because I'm pretty dark, but here's a joke that I tried to translate. It goes something like this. There was once an alcoholic, because it always starts with drinking, and his wife, because every husband must come with one, and she wants him to quit and wears robes and makes tea, constantly serving sweets and preserves and sour cream, always sour cream, my mother tells us, over wine and tea and sweets, and yes, sour cream, because coming from Ukraine, it is even more certain, and the preserves are always cherry. But back to this wife. Her friend advises her to fill a bathtub to the brim with vodka and then throw in a dead cat. Your husband will be so disgusted, she says. He'll never drink again. My mother finishes her white. The red gives her a headache now, or an upset stomach, or some other pain, a sobering one she's discovered in America. Then she tells the unworthy boy I brought home, my husband, years and years of drinking later, that the secret to keeping a woman happy is to always keep her glass full. And so he does this. And the wife too does as she's told, then leaves the house. How easy it must have been to find dead cats back there. And then, when she returns, everything is quiet. No stumbling or snoring, no bottles on the floor. Then she walks into the kitchen. My mother pauses. Then I jump in to clarify why the kitchen. That bathtubs were often in kitchens and multi-purpose. Ours would be covered with a wooden board and transformed to a makeshift table for cutting potatoes and kalbaska or onions or anything boiled or pickled, soon to be doused in mayonnaise or, you guessed it, sour cream. But this wife sees that the bathtub is empty and the husband is wringing out the dead cat, whispering, "Nu, kiska, nu, еще чуть-чуть." This part doesn't sound as good in English, she says. Kitty, a little bit more. No, pussy, a few more drops is better. Then my mother takes the empty bottle with her fingers wrapping tight around the glass, mimicking the ringing motion. This, she says, is how we squeeze everything to the last drop. The dead are no exception. Thank you so much, everybody.
Aviya's been trying to get in. I think she registered and they never sent her the link, and I don't have the link. It's weird. All I know is the registration link. So she's having terrible trouble.
If
Robbie,
you click on the registration link, it will tell you, it asks you if you want to join the meeting in progress.
Oh, she said that it was flagged as a suspicious email. That's why she couldn't find it.
Well,
So-
any email from us has got to be suspicious.
Yeah, from me especially. Here she is. So,
Robbie?
yes,
Robbie, can I recommend a book to our previous reader real quickly?
sure.
Julia, do I have her? I'm so bad with names. I'd like to recommend a book called The Missing, The Search for the Six Among the 6 Million. If you haven't read it, it's a scholarly work about somebody trying to find their dead relatives who had died in Auschwitz. And it's very powerful. And I think you might find it interesting.
Thank you very much. I will absolutely check it out. Thank you.
And now our other reader, I believe, has made it.
Yes,
Are you here?
I hope so. Hi.
It's
Wow,
delightful to
great
meet
to
you
see
finally.
you. Great to see you. Wow, what an experience. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, this
Yeah.
was I thought I would not succeed. I really tried. So, first of all, hi everyone. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you, Robbie.
You're
Um,
welcome. Let me introduce you and then you can start reading. Okay. Aviya, am I pronouncing it correctly? Aviya?
Aviya.
Okay, Aviya Kushner grew up in a Hebrew-speaking home in New York. She's the author of Wolf, Lamb, Bomb, My Orison Books, winner of the 2021 Chicago Review of Books Poetry Award, and a Forward, Indies finalist in poetry. I'm a little confused about that. and the Grammar of God, Spiegel and Grau, Penguin Random House, a National Jewish Book Award finalist, and Sam Rohr Prize finalist. She's the Forward's language columnist and a 2022 National Endowment for the Arts Fellow in Translation. She teaches at Columbia College, Chicago, where she directs the MFA program in creative writing. And welcome. I'm glad that you made it, and I hope you had a beautiful Shabbat.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here, and wow, so much drama with Zoom, but I'm glad that it worked out. And Robbie, I love your beautiful background. It's really lovely. Behind
Thank
you,
you. Thank
yeah,
Van Gogh.
there you go. More exciting than almost anything. Yeah. And Julia, I see you as well. So lovely to see poets and poetry lovers in this virtual space. I thought I would read the first poem in the book, just an introduction to Wolfram Baum. So Wolfram Baum is a it's a conversation with the book of Isaiah. And sometimes when you're working on something, it's hard to explain what you're doing. But with distance, I think I can explain that when my grandfather died, I was very, very close to my grandfather, and I was very, I think, frustrated that in Jewish tradition, there's nothing for a grandchild to do. You know, so you sit shiva if you're a close relative, or you say cottage, but grandchildren really don't have anything to do. And I sort of felt lost, and I wanted to do something to mark my grandfather and his effect on my life. So my grandfather was a very elegant and well-dressed man, and he was also very punctual. I'm not. So I went to synagogue every week for a year on time. He was a very early morning person, and I did that. And then as part of that experience of being there very early in the morning, I found myself reading the entire Torah again as a way to remember him. And when the year was over, I was very sad because I felt like my um, I was sad that it was over and that I had nothing left to do. You know, my grandfather wasn't there, but and during that year, I think one of the things that I realized was what a tremendous poet Isaiah was. I was in poetry graduate school, and I was just amazed by what an incredible poet he was. And I started to think of him as a poet, and I started to think of Isaiah as someone I could talk to and learn from. But I think I can say now, after all this time has passed, that I think it was sort of my way of holding on to my grandfather and just having something left. So I think that's probably why I worked on these poems for so long. I just didn't want to let go. So I thought I would read the first poem in the book, and then I'll read two poems that in some way reference music, and then two poems that reference wine. And I imagine that after this reading, people would like to have a glass of wine. So I'm just gonna go along those lines. And I see Julia already in that mode. Um, yeah. Okay. So the first poem that I'll read is very short. It's the first poem in the collection, and it's called The Book of Isaiah. And it was one of the earliest poems that I wrote, but then years later I went back and I revised it after working on the entire project. It's called The Book of Isaiah. For years, I wanted to be that angry and for it to be that beautiful. I loved the poetry of rage. And now all I can remember are the hills. I can hear the fire in them, words shaking earth. Even a bull knows its owner, an ass its master. Hear heavens, give ear, O earth. So you'll recognize some of that conversation and that the opening line to the book of Isaiah where he addresses the heavens and the earth. Um, and as time went on, I found that whenever something was going on in my life that I couldn't figure out, I went back to the book of Isaiah. So this is a poem that I wrote after receiving a very unexpected marriage proposal. And I didn't know what to say. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't know it was going to happen. And so I wrote this poem called Music. And you'll recognize the first line is from Isaiah, and the rest is me. Music. Like a lyre, my head moans for the girls who are taken, the young wives, and I cannot decide if I too want to be a wife, bound and also protected, or if I would rather be a lone crooner in the wilderness, there not by choice, but by a wire, a flame, a pillar, a force of earth. Art is a religion, some say, with a sad nod of their heads. But I think it is also a wife and husband, a god and servant, friend and sweet master, music and moan. And I think it was just a way to have my life and Isaiah and my grandfather's life at the same time at all times. So the next poem I'm going to read also takes a little bit of music in there. And something that I found that really interesting is there's so many people from so many different traditions who claim Isaiah as theirs. There's so many people who see symbolism in Isaiah, and I really didn't know that when I started. When I started, I kind of felt like it was sort of my poet and someone I read on my own. And then as time went on, I found that a lot of people were interested in Isaiah and a lot of people claimed him. So this is a poem about that. And it's one of several poems where I kind of wanted to imagine what Isaiah looked like and what he sounded like. So this poem is called Rumor. There's a crazy man in those hills, howling that he can comfort us all. There's an old crazy man in all of us, saying, I raised you, made you tall, and you rebellious little wuss, you forgot that an ox knows who owns him, an ass knows his place. Rain falls and we rain blame the way our ancestors rained blame. Bombs explode in a faraway city where I once lived, and the world rains its curses on man, on God, on the whole idea of I will be what I will be. I am what I am. Forget tenses because I am past and present and future, and I breathed you into you. Listen, someone once said, I am comforting you, breathing through an old, towering prophet who is nothing but a singer on a stage, a singer when there is only one light left and the soft illusion of a face. In a few years, you too will be just rumor, a fire, dry grass, a singer who sang and then disappeared from the lilt of performance, the light of the audience, the light of the world, a balm to the crazy, the rebel, the wuss, Isaiah to the nations of the earth. Like the tale of an old crazy man in the hills, a song and a howl, a wolf and a lamb, a story everyone claims. Yeah, so I found myself really thinking about some of those iconic phrases and how to work with them, and how beautiful they were. You know, the wolf and the lamb, and the heavens and the earth, and all of these. A small child playing at the mouth of a snake, and just trying to learn from them and understanding where that power came from. I should say that something else um, that really moved me in Isaiah and moved me more as time went on was how he writes anger. I think that in our culture, there are folks who are allowed to be angry, and there are folks who aren't, you know? And I think especially as a woman writer, I think that that's something that I felt that I wasn't always allowed to do. And what I admired about Isaiah was that in the book of Isaiah, anger is beautiful. And I think that that's so different from what we hear, where anger is ugly, anger is something to avoid, anger is scary. But in the book of Isaiah, um, anger is often beautiful. So I'm gonna read a I'm gonna read a poem about that combines Hebrew and English. And I want to credit my teacher, Robert Pinsky, who told me that I was struggling. Hebrew is my first language, and I was struggling with translation and figuring out how to do that. And he said, oh, you know, what you should do is you should just put Hebrew into English. You should expand English. You don't need to translate. So I'm going to read a poem that I wrote taking Robert's advice. It's called Isaiah Gets Feisty. And you can hear a little bit of admiration of Isaiah's power and comfort with anger. Isaiah gets feisty. And on that day, the ram's horn will be blown, Uval Aldim, and the lost will come from Assyria, oh yeah, and the forgotten from Egypt, Vanidachim Eretz Mitzrayim. And then you little woman of earth will remember God. Then his headdress will look glorious to you suddenly. And then you will say, to find what I want, I must return, must come back, must free myself through my past. Go learn from Sennacherib, fat king who thought he conquered with his muscles. Go look at the foolish Egyptians who thought pyramids meant permanent strength. You sit and think words will protect you. Oh, who can collect you from the corners of the earth? Adonai Zuz v'gibor, God is brave and muscular. God is the brave of war, the keeper of the tongues. Open the gates to your head, your heart. Return from your personal Assyria, your endless Egypt. And it's kind of a loose translation, I would say. Um, and it's something that I think I felt more comfortable in poetry, just getting freer and freer with how that works. And uh, let's see. Trying to something, I guess I wanted to read one more before I get to wine. And this is a question that I get a lot. And I don't know if I'll have time for a Q&A, but I thought I would anticipate a question. question I get a lot is, why don't you write in Hebrew? And I did start out writing in Hebrew and then switch to English. But here's my answer. Why don't you write in Hebrew? Because I'm afraid of you, Isaiah. Afraid I'll hear the 6 wings, 2 to cover the face, and 2 to cover the legs, and 2 to fly. And I ask, how can I praise wings that cover feet and face? And how can I curse when you have already cursed with your carcasses of sleazy financiers, with your ugly and public deaths for those who squeeze the poor, the widowed, the temporarily weak? You ask me to compete head on with you, and I can't because I cannot hear in your presence. You thunder so in the space inside my left ear that I cannot forget you, even for the length of a line, the weight of a tear. And now I'm going to move to 2 poems about wine that make use of wine. So the second toss, this is called 2 Love Songs to Denial. And it makes use of a single line, "Kichalot tered eni," which literally means when my wine ends, my eye will fall. But it really means that, when I'm out of wine, I'm going to cry. So 1, when my wine ends, my eye will fall, meaning my tears will cascade, and I will look into the desert of my life and wish for water, little brooks of hopeful water in the hot dust. I will wait for men who will shield me from heavy winds, who will provide shade from the tired earth, but they will not come, will not run to me fast enough, will not understand all they need to understand. And how would they? How can anyone expect the infinite from the finite? And so I will look to the heavens and beg for a rock, a stone, the thump and thud of thunder, music, lightning, presence, a light on a faraway stage. 2, when I can no longer deny everything I want to deny, when I have to say, I chose it, I asked for it, this life I have been given, this life, the life of a crooner, a bird, a prophet in the goddamn wilderness. I picked it for myself. I chose this fate. I watched my lips burn and took the loneliness and the song and the sweat. I grabbed it. I grabbed it. I was there. I traded love for music. And I hope you can hear just this trying to take some of Isaiah's anger and his comfort with anger and figuring out how that works. So there's little snippets of Isaiah in that poem. And the last poem I'm going to read, it's the shortest poem in this collection. It's called Wine. And if you have some wine, I hope you drink it. And it's something that my grandfather was the only survivor of his entire family. He was a German Jew. Everyone was killed in the Holocaust except for him. And I thought a lot about that over the many years that I worked on these poems. I thought about how he lived and how he managed to live past so much, and how he enjoyed the life that he had while never forgetting where he came from and what was lost. This poem's called Wine. Now that I finally understand what it means to walk wineless and with sunburned feet through the pages of my life, I know with my mouth and my eyes that I have not died. I have just lived a little. Thank you.
Wow, fully worth waiting for. Thank you so much to all 3 of our wonderful features. It's just really, I forgot to watch the time. So I'm going to ask the people in the open mic to make it as short as possible, either 1 poem or 2 short poems. Okay? So our first person on the open mic is Mark Petry, because he actually signed in on the list. So, Mark.
Thank you. What a wonderful evening. By the way, you know, it'd be really fun to do sometime. If we all took Genesis, like I spent, I don't know how much time on Genesis 1, going over let there be light at the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. And I even think about, is it possible to have a first day? If the day started at dusk, is there really a first day? Because if God created the world at night, there was a first night and then there was a next day, but there was not a first day. And I've spent too many times thinking about this, but I would love to have a poetic conversation with other people about these types of issues, especially in Hebrew. All right, so I'll read this one poem. And Julia, this is a new poem. I wish I could read the one I just was working on yesterday, which is about my Ukrainian relatives, once they had drank enough homemade vodka, debating whether they were Ukrainian or Russian. And, the women fixing fish and padishkis and piroshkis in the back room, that whole scene. But that's not quite there. So I'm going to read this one. And this one is, I think, a brave poem. I hope it is. And it deals with vulnerability. I'm working on vulnerability because I believe to be a really good poet, you have to be vulnerable. And I'm trying to make myself more and more vulnerable. So this one is really vulnerable. And it's called Tonight, My Mother Tries to Reach Me. Tonight, my mother tries to reach me, but she cannot. There is no phone service in the afterworld. She doesn't know the number now that my landline is dead. She has something to tell me. The words almost form in my head, though I cannot translate the language of the dead. My name on her tongue echoes across neural pathways between my ears. Mark, Mark, she tells me. I did not expect to die that night. My heart was just too weak. I went to sleep and could not wake up. You see, I was upset with Harry, your father, when he came to the hospital. I know you don't think he is your father, but does it really matter? We all have parents, circumstance provides. I was mad at him. He bought a suit and was planning to leave me. I looked at him and said, you killed me. And then I looked at you and added, both of you killed me. I never had the chance to apologize. These words were not true. You know you did not kill me. I went to my grave before I could let you know. I rest as uneasy in death as in life. Please let me know you do not hate me. Let it go. Enjoy your life.
Thanks, Mark. I don't know what it is with letters to the mother. I wrote a poem, Letter to My Mother, too, recently. Our next reader will be Karen.
Sorry, my foot got tangled in the mouse cord. All right, one poem. Stop and try our homemade pie. We pause on the long stretch from Kelso to Sutherland. They serve the solid crust, unbuttered, underbaked, unloved, pale and dense as particle board. We overhear the old man at the next table, deflated version of his pastor, who promises everything you ever wanted over on that other side, who is leaning in close, trying to outtalk death. Will I get back my teeth? How old will I be? Can't tell a lie with custard pie. I order custard, and that's why this slice of pie is a lying cheat, not worth the time to cook or eat. We ate blueberries all the way down to California. We crammed them by the handfuls into our mouths, each dark burst staining, perfuming our fingers.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you,
All
Rob.
right, our next reader is Greg.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Just
All
like the
right.
commercial.
Yeah. I need to find the poem. I'm sorry. I wasn't quite ready.
I can come back to you.
All right. I have a stray finger that seems to have disappeared, everybody.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before.
I'll figure it out.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Meanwhile, why don't you read, Neil? Because you win the prize for having come the furthest.
I do win the prize for having come the furthest. Oh, look, I'll read from my book, Awakening. And it's a love poem, just another silly love song. It's called This Passing Day. It seems to me that the brittle bright morning when we first loved was the glistening shimmer of dewdrop. All the world's wealth was ours. Time seemed held in fragile crystal stop. Now it is late afternoon. The sky is clear and the sinking sun more intensely beautiful than it was long ago. Who can know if night will suddenly fall or days stretch on past midnight in muted, dimming, surreal twilight? No matter. Each transient moment is rich with joy, and passing time has been our strange friend, gifting us a plaited golden cord that twists and entwines, tying us to each other and to the present, the past, and the unknowable future. So come, take my hand. That fragile morning is long gone. Evening must fall, but the stars promise light. We have lived and loved together, shared in glory throughout the long passing day. Is this not enough? It must be enough. It is much more than enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, Greg, try it again.
Okay. I'm still unmuted. Before I start, I just want to give kudos to 3 fine features. I really enjoyed them all. A nice variety. I had planned to read a little trilogy of takes on spring called Spring Bittersweet, but I'll read the 2 shortest. One's a sonnet, the other's shorter than that. The first is in the first year of the pandemic. Here's number 2. It's called Sprung, 2021. Oh, starry day, the mockingbird is back, burbling the air with improvisation. Oh, deep, dark well, you know you're one gone cat, singular warbler, sonic sensation. And you were gone so long, I'd just about given up on hearing you splash, so free, so easy, sliding up the scale and down, plucking surprises, chortling in your glee. So now you go indigo, slapping slack key, laying down blues, blaster, jazz, master, the first, the one, the only ever, backbeat juicing up that razzmatazz. But then I'm kicking back to listen when he springs away. He's gone again. And a little turn here, it's called Invernal Equinox. It's spring, you hear? It's bloody spring. Oh, make no mistake about the blood, it's Ukraine spring, where the racket of guns and tanks and missiles silences the larks and nightingales for the croak of ravens. Grannies giving sunflowers to Russian knife cadets, So where you die, they will grow. And so for every abject failure of earthly geopolitics, there will be flowers.
Thank you. Our next reader is Alan.
Thanks, Robbie. Many of us say a prayer for healing as often as we can. I didn't get a chance to say the Misha Berach this week for my friend Fred. And I offer this, it's a harsh poem, some say, but I offer it to him as a poem of healing. Transformers. Like his grandson's toy, the Russian army swiftly reassembles itself in Belarus, Donetsk, and Crimea with blood banks, field hospitals, mysterious HQs marked by geodesic domes dark inside where the orders arrive and are mistaken for tarot and silently obeyed. This way the tumor surrounds my friend's esophagus from many staging points in his throat and abdomen, the thyroid, the intestines, the nether regions. No one would willingly travel in conditions like these. This is where the rages we never got to speak have gathered, and who can blame us given the awfulness we have banked inside? It strangles so that we can't eat and no longer think of eating. We wait out the wreckage the body can do to itself in some subterranean station, decades of another century. Our daughters and sons have never imagined. And into this come the healers, charged with excising ills as our insides get chewed once more this morning through a port. This hole dug in our soul, meant to make us a new life, here or in the long dreamed of other side. Thanks.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, our last reader at the open mic, unless I read one, is Brandwin.
Thank you. This recently appeared in Spill Words. It was one of their featured poems. Leaves on the breeze. Silver and maple, purple maple leaves on the trees and on the breeze. In the spring, there were maple helicopters everywhere and whirligigs flying free. Now autumn leaves fill the air. Gray squirrels, chipmunks, and others gathering acorns, nuts, and seeds, filling their larders for the wintering. Vast rafts of geese and ducks on ponds and lakes, ready to fly south to avoid the winter flakes. Tall trees with spreading naked branches, reaching to the sky as though grasping for the light, before the long winter's night advances. Autumn is here, few leaves left on the trees, needles on the evergreens. White snow cover is near. Are you ready for the freeze? Wait for the Arctic breeze. Thank you.
Thank you. I skipped somebody. I skipped Dick. So please read.
Thank you. No worries at all. So I'm going to do something even perhaps, I don't know if daring is the right word, maybe stupid, than reading a new poem is to read a poem that hasn't yet been abandoned as a new poem. And it's motivated by one of the lines or one of the poems that Julia read and the themes of Aviya's. And the prompt for it was just seeing the look on Zelensky's face when he arrived in Bucha. It's called Witness, the Warring Lords, and the Forever Price. And the epigraph is from Genesis. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against them before the Lord has been so great that the Lord sent us to destroy it. In the beginning, it was Lot and his daughters, his unnamed wife, those damnable angels. Sodom, Gomorrah, Berka, Irpin, all the same, slaughter, panic, outrage, shame. This is the stuff of endless lists, the kind and number of disjointed bones, the chromatone of burning flesh, the breadth and width of skin as measured in pain. Kids skinned, knees not kissed, scabs unpicked, toys crushed, the unnamed babies who will never go to war, the named ones who will. I rip that page from my embattled Bible. Overhead, a lone goose sounds like two. Call and response, so alone. I look back to the remains of the terrible book. There, the limitless victims and the nameless wife, who I will call Selah. Her life as witness as she considers her immolate sisters, the lone goose, the good, the vagrant, the lascivious, the chaste. Her gaze stays fixed on the crime, forever tied to the chasmed sky. She sees the hands that reach from the graves, the broken crutches, how blue the fire burns, how blackened the flesh, the dirt beneath the fingernails of the dead, the sins that are not sins, the sins that are, the gods who worship their own idols, the idols made in the image of their savage gods. Only Selah looks back. She knows the price. She chooses to be a pillar of salt. Thank you all.
Thank you, Deb. I'll read one poem from my food book that no one has picked up yet. I keep sending it out. It may be the only one that isn't published yet, but it's going to be in an anthology, and I don't think they'll care whether I read it. Delicious. I almost never write a love poem. I'm not sure how to voice that feeling. Envy those wise in the ways of warm embraces. Instead, I spend long hours in the kitchen, whipping up some special treat for those who probably won't eat it. Like the Hanukkah extravaganzas I used to spend so many days planning and preparing every year. Latkes and homemade applesauce, a golden braid of challah, 2 kinds of soup, salads, and desserts. I didn't let the guests know how much it meant to have them share my table. They would often cancel, leaving us to eat the meal alone. For me, love has to rise like bread dough, worked until it has a tender crumb. It's not simple, though maybe simplicity might come if I work hard enough. I couldn't write about my parents till they'd been dead for years. Slow learner, but I tell myself the slowest soup captures the deepest flavor. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, so much for coming. I'm going to turn off the recording, but it's been a wonderful pleasure to have all of you in our great features today.
Julia, I do hope you can find that book, The Missing.